Big Red made the trip from Bowling Green, Kentucky. In this border war, fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
They'll throw it down the seam, and it's a touchdown. Dalvin Smith.
7 carries, 28 yards. And he lost the ball again. It's going to be a scoop for 6. And it's Tavante Beckett with a hat trick of fumble recoveries. His 3rd of the game.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Big recap this week, guys. 2020 Moonshine Throwdown went down this past weekend in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Not quite the level of competition. Well, I won't say level of competition, quite the level of competitiveness, fierceness that we were hoping to see. As a matter of fact, we thought we were going to be witnessing a game live in a downpour, and I'll be darned if the rain didn't just go away right before kickoff, and it didn't return until after the game. Not one drop of rain. Steven and I were at the game. Steve, did you feel a random drop of rain? Because I sure didn't.
No, bro, it cleared out. The sun came out right before kickoff. It was actually beautiful, perfect weather in Bowling Green for this game. Yeah,
it really was. We had just finished up that, we were getting ready to walk down to the ESPN 102.7 radio trailer to do the spot that they asked us to do, and that is right when the clouds had parted, and there was even a rainbow bursting out over the campus, and I was like, all right, well, the gods are on our side today. We're going to get dry weather. But we didn't really get the game we had hoped we would. I mean, I'm sure half of this rivalry got the game that they wanted to see. They really wanted to see a dominating performance. And Marshall, I guess you can't put it any other way, as they are as advertised at this point. They are as advertised. But before we get into that, I've got to thank, I've got to shout out to our sponsor for the Moonshine Throwdown podcast now. That's, of course, Monograms of Moonshine Custom Apparel. She's awesome. She does great work. Any idea you've got kicking around up in your head that you'd like to see on a t-shirt, she can pretty much do that for you. So find her. She's got an Etsy store, and you find her on Twitter at Monograms, the letter N, Shine, Monograms in Shine. Kind of anything you want. Just, if you want something kind of herd related, inspired, topper inspired, she's not going to break any copyright laws or anything like that, or any trademark infringement or any of that. But if you got something kind of inspired that will kind of speak to you in a hilltopper herd kind of way, she'll work with you to kind of come up with something. But she does good work. All the guys here on the podcast have items that she has created, and I'm sure they're all pretty happy with them. I know I'm happy with everything that I've had created. So big shout out to Monograms and Shine for sponsoring the Moonshine Throwdown podcast and keeping us looking sweet in some killer threads. All right, to the game, fellas. Marshall, Western Kentucky. It was a Conference USA opener for the Herd, second game in conference play for the Tops. They had just got themselves a win by traveling to Murfreesboro in the 100 Miles of Hate. So we thought they were trending in the right direction, and I really thought they were, but man, this Marshall defense is just amazing. 38-14 was the final score, but let's be honest. The score really doesn't indicate how this game played out. There were some positives for the Toppers late, but for 3 quarters, if you're a Topper fan, you are not happy with how this game went. It was just utter dominance by the Herd run game, the Herd offensive line, and the Herd defense. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So Marshall now stands at 3-0 on the season, 1-0 in conference. Western Kentucky drops to 1-3, 1-1 in conference. Herd picks up that first Conference USA win, gets that so important tiebreaker over Western Kentucky. You always want those. Herd lands themselves just outside of the top 25 at number 26, which is egregious. I haven't looked and dived in too deep, Trace. I'm willing to bet Marshall's the only remaining unbeaten team that's not in the top 25. Maybe Coastal Carolina. I'd say if Coastal won. I don't know. We lost Trace wasn't able to make the game, but we're going to get Moffin here in a second. But talk to me about the game itself, Trace, the lead in, what you were able to see pre-game, like on TV or on social media, all that. Since you weren't able to make the trip, we were really hoping you could get there, but it is what it is. Circumstances just didn't work out. So what did you get from the Twitterverse and the social media world and on TV or whatever leading into the game?
Well, a lot of pub about the Moonshine Throwdown rivalry. I mean, you have to notice that if you've been on Twitter over the last few days or social media or whatever you want to look at. I mean, there's been a lot of pub and a lot of word and stuff, breaking out about the Moonshine Throwdown rivalry. I mean, from the Herd Zone article to all the radio spots you all were doing, and then, of course, your stuff that you did on Thursday with West Kentucky radio. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I listened to it. Really good stuff. I mean, that's cool. I mean, that's really cool to see the rivalry start to get more, I don't know, national, if you want to call it that. I mean, a lot of the
traction, right?
Traction. Yes. A lot of the people like do the broadcast of the games refer to it as unofficially the unofficial rivalry name, so-and-so, this, that, and then the fact that there's Chuck McGill wrote an article on Marshall's, sports page. That's a big thing for the Marshall side of things to start embracing it like that. Talking about the scholarship and everything. So like, it's really good. It's really good publicity. And I think that now a lot more people are going to know about this rivalry that didn't know about it beforehand, or the ones that were kind of unsure about it are probably more sure about it now than they were before. Not because of how competitive this game was, which I'll get more into that later. But I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot more eyeballs and ears and whatever you want to call it on this rivalry, and that's awesome. That's what we're here for, basically, is to try to just sell the living crap out of this rivalry, and so far so good.
I think the word we're looking for here is it helped legitimize what we're trying to do, because
yes.
Marshall in an official capacity reached out, and you said they wrote the article, and it's of course about the Moonshine Throwdown scholarship campaigns that were in the midst of trying to raise funds for these endowments. So of course they like that, but just the fact that they acknowledge that there's something good that we're trying to do, and they realize that there's something that's not just about football or not just about basketball. We're trying to go beyond the courts and do something good for these schools. That's great. And of course, you mentioned I was on Red Towel Radio on Thursday, and then of course Steven and I were on Top Our Tailgate, the pregame show on Saturday, and that streamed straight to the WKU Athletics page. And as a matter of fact, the segment before we were on Top Our Tailgate, they were doing a segment with Western Kentucky Athletic Director Todd Stewart. So we got to talk to Todd for a minute, and he mentioned, I'll let Steven tell you what he said, since I'm sure he liked the things that Todd said. I know I liked the things that Todd said, but now that he's been able to join the stream, Steven I'm going to get him in here. Steve, just what I asked Trace, leading into the game, pre-kickoff, what was the feeling? What did you see? I mean, I know you and I were basically joined at the hip, but we don't see everything the same. What was your feel about leading into the game Thursday, Friday night, Saturday morning, all that kind of stuff before the ball was actually kicked off?
Well, I mean, I know my prediction, being a 7-point spread, which is what the actual spread ended up being. And then my prediction mirrored that, was really centered around the possibility of bad weather. We were looking at a windy, rainy, sloppy, nasty game, which ultimately probably would have favored the Hilltoppers as far as slowing down Marshall offense that we know can put up points, make them one-dimensional, even though that one dimension is, we knew coming in was really solid. And we know going out now is really solid. And then the weather cleared out. Sun came out. Rainbow came out. Grant Wells and Brendan Knox are Piggy T fumbles at the end of that rainbow. I don't know what was there, but really kind of paved the way for just an all-around effort by Marshall that was impressive on both sides of the ball. And then, like you said, talking to Todd before we went on ESPN radio, he made the direct comments to us that when he interacts with fans and alumni donors, etc., that they are inquiring more about the Marshall matchups and when those are happening, and just talking about the importance and relevancy of these matchups that we are highlighting and talking about, every day, every week, every episode, more so than the Middle Tennessee historic rival as great as it is, and as much as people hate them, the relevancy factor is legitimate, and Middle just doesn't have it. They don't have the fan support. They don't have their own administration support, and it's just hard to argue against this rivalry, being the best one in Conference USA, bar none, easily.
Yeah, even though this game was far more lopsided than we had seen in the series, outside of, the other way in 2016 when Western won by like 54 points, this is Marshall's largest margin of victory in the Moonshine Throwdown era. And we knew they were good. We knew Western was still trying to find an identity, really. They were trying to find the keys to the lock. And, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But right now, after the game is said and done, it's over, there's no more downs to be played. Marshall is clearly a step above where Western is right now. But we do know how quickly things can change. It was a graduate transfer quarterback leading the charge last year for Western Kentucky. He led them, to the latter 2/3 of the season. They ended up being a 9-win ball club with a bowl win, and bring in another graduate transfer quarterback, and it's not working. So let's talk about some stats, because I know you guys are feeling certain ways about certain things. So we mentioned the records of everybody. This is now Marshall has won 4 straight in the Moonshine Throwdown. That brings the overall series lead directly to Huntington, 4-3. This is really starting to, nip it at the Hilltoppers. I'm sure they've got to want to get one now. I'm sure, I told Steven at the game when it was getting late at the game, we've almost checked off all the Hilltoppers, like, things they like to say after football's going downhill. And I said, the only ones left is when's basketball season start? And no sooner than I said that, I checked social media, and it's when does basketball season start? So, I know they really hate this. So hopefully they can get it around. I want to talk about the game environment. I had a great time. I always have a great time when I go to Bowling Green. The fellas on ESPN Radio asked me my favorite part of coming to Bowling Green, and without hesitation, I said that it's meeting new people, seeing some old friends. The folks there are just so hospitable. I cannot interact with 2 more hospitable, friendly fan bases, at least to me. But, I think there's a lot of guys on both sides, a lot of fans on both sides that will welcome you over no matter what color shirt you're wearing. They'll welcome you over to the tailgate. They'll pop a cold one, fill your belly, and then they'll go hate your guts for 3 hours between the whistles. And then after the game, no matter what the scoreboard says, you can come back over and crack another cold one and get your belly full again. That's kind of what we like. We like that mutual respect, but the complete hatred during game time. It was great to link up with some guys. I got to shout out a couple of guys in particular, Topper Tailgater on Twitter and at Phototopper on Twitter. 2 great guys. We spent a lot of time with them yesterday, just shooting the breeze and hanging out. They actually loaded us down with some sweet Topper Tailgater swag. Trace, you missed out. We came home with some sweet gear. So you really missed out there. I know Phototopper was jabbing you a little bit, trying to push your buttons on why you weren't here. He was calling out some of your favorite things to try to get you to hop in the car and drive straight to Bowling Green.
Man, that's a pretty impressive tactic. I gotta admit.
Well, it was all in good fun, that. But anyway, those guys went out above and beyond as far as I'm concerned with their hospitality and friendliness. I've got no complaints. I just, my only complaint is I hate that it takes 2 years to get back there for another game. But, that's the nature of the beast. Let's talk stats, and then we'll talk about how you guys saw the overall game before we get into individuals. The big 4: yardage, time of possession, first downs, and turnovers. Marshall swept the board, and as you might think, the score kind of indicates that, but might surprise you to see some of these were a little closer than you figured. Marshall only had 343 yards of offense. Western was right there with 294. So less than 50 yards separated the 2 teams in total offense. Time of possession a little more lopsided, 34-41 for the Herd, 25-19 for the Toppers. First downs, just a couple, 17 for Marshall, 15 for the Tops. But the turnovers, that's the big one. 3 lost fumbles for Western Kentucky, 0 turnovers for the Herd. That proved to be the ultimate killer early and often. As a matter of fact, the very first time the Toppers crossed midfield, they fumbled the ball away, and Marshall took it right down the field and scored once again. So, guys, overall, your thoughts on the game before we talk about stats. Trace, the Herd got the win. You can lead the charge.
Well, I mean, you have to be really impressed with what you saw if you're a Marshall fan, or even if you weren't a Marshall fan, you had to be really impressed with Marshall's performance. I mean, I was extremely concerned. Honestly, I was pretty daggone concerned that they would play really rusty in this game, or at least come out rusty. 2 plays and they were in the end zone. I mean, there was no rust. Like, that was surprising because there was a big 3-week layoff, and I expected, on the road, first road game of the year, rivalry game, 3-week layoff, that they'd be rusty and look like crap in the first quarter. Hardly. They were about as sharp as you could be to come out of that game, and that's a very good sign for how the coaching staff got them ready to play. And of course, that's just good for the players because they came out and executed. But I mean, that's like you said before. I said, like, before we started recording, that it really wasn't obviously as close as 38-14. But I mean, it was a phenomenal performance from Marshall. It really was. I mean, they could have probably put up more points if they would have tried to at the end. A lot of fans were kind of saying, "Oh, well, Doc needs to, I'm not going to say anything too deep, but grow a set, and try to put up more points." But that's just not his style. That
grab a sack.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's just not his style. He's not Jeff Brom. He's not going to try to put up 60 a game. That's just not his style. So, I mean, but from what he basically allowed them, quote unquote, to score, they still put up 38 points and, played really well. Defense, I mean, what else can you say about the defense? I mean, this has literally been probably the best, at least in my lifetime, this might be the best first 3 games of the overall defensive performance for the first 3 games that I've ever seen from Marshall. Like, to be dead serious. Like, I don't know. I'd have to look back at certain years, but I mean, what more can you ask out of them? 0 points allowed, 7 points allowed, and 14 points allowed. And the legitimate first string starting defense, when they're playing at their best, has only given up, or not their best, but when they're playing full steam, full effort, have only given up 7 realistic points all year in 3 games. Like, that to me is mind blowing. Yeah. And I mean, that's a really good sign. I mean, I know we expected the defense to be good, but or at least pretty good. But like, this defense has been flat out fantastic so far. They can absolutely lead Marshall to a conference title game if they could just keep on the path they're going. You got to be excited. I mean, Grant Wells played a really good game, even though he didn't have a flashy game. He was in control the whole way. Running game, yeah, it was there, of course. Offensive line, that's what I said. The trenches, I said they needed to beat them up. And they beat them up. Trenches, it was lopsided as all get out. Offensive line, Marshall's was just dominant, absolutely dominant. Defensive line did their thing. I mean, it was impressive. I mean, Western, like you said, they're still working through some things, but like, they're not. I don't think they're a bad team. So, like, Marshall really did a number on them, and you got to be impressed by that. And especially since the last 3 games against Western, even 2 years ago when Western was 3-9, Marshall only won by 3, and they had to eke it out in the very few final seconds. So
they had to come from behind and then eke it out.
Had to come from behind late in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, right. I mean, late in the fourth quarter. So it was really impressive that they were able to win convincingly. I did not expect that. So kudos to the coaching staff, kudos to the offense, defense, and special teams. It was just a total team effort.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I'm going to run down before I bring Moff in. I'm going to run down kind of the timeline of how it goes scoring-wise to how we got to where we were. But from the outset, I know Steven doesn't really want to talk about Marshall that much. I mean, I know he's going to be complimentary of the defense because he kept saying it to me during the game, like, geez, they just swarm. Every time we're there, there's 7 guys near our guy.
Yeah.
So I know he doesn't want to go down that road again because it sucks. I'm with you. But I think when it's all said and done, maybe how this season goes, the big tell will be next week with who trots out at starting quarterback. I know Steven's got some words on that, so I'm not going to ruin it. But all I'm going to say is at the end of the day, at the end of the season, depending on how this goes, you might look back to this game and Hilltopper fans might actually have to bite their tongue and say, geez, thank you to Vontae Beckett for that scoop and score. Because if you'll notice what happened right after that happened, you'll see where we went. But look, the Herd jumped out. Trace said it. Scored on 2 plays, 75 yards, 38 seconds into the game. Brendan Knox, 45-yard touchdown. So we knew the Herd was going to be able to run the ball. They led 28-0 at halftime, which is something we did not think we would see from Marshall. And at the 9:20 mark, that's when it happened. The fumble hit the ground. Tavante Beckett, nobody around him, by the way, just cavalierly picks the ball up and trots 38 yards in for a touchdown. And Stephen will talk about what happened after that series, after that play. But after that, Marshall only added a field goal. They kind of called the dogs off a little bit. You know, they've got their eyes on a bigger prize right now. This game's well in hand. They're trying to stay healthy and not do anything to, you know, I'm sure they've got title hopes right now. But the Tops did put 14 on the board. You know, a big 51-yard pass to Xavier Lane gets them down close. A rushing touchdown. I'm not using names because I know Steven wants to talk about this stuff. A 2-yard touchdown run to close out the third to get him on the board, and then a 26-yard touchdown pass with 6 seconds to go to get him to 14. So we saw some positives there. Steve, come in now after we've talked about the timeline of scoring. Talk about what you saw early from the Tops and what your thoughts are towards the end of the game.
Yeah, hold on, wait. I'm getting breaking news in my earpiece right now. Piggy T just fumbled again. It happened. Oh my gosh!
Chill, Stephen. No chill.
You hate to see it. I swear, you hate to see it. No, really. The game opened up. Marshall won the toss, elected to receive. As you've already said, 2 plays, 75 yards, big 30-yard pass play, 45-yard rush play. You know, Brendan Knox just brushing off arm tackles. You know, you can't do that to the 4th-string FAU running back. You've got to bring him down with a body tackle.
You can't bring him down. 4th-string.
So, you know, big kudos. They came out. They did what they should have done. They leaned on their strength. Grant Wells had a great game. He's an excellent straw that's going to stir that drink for this year and many more years. Obviously, there's frustration within the WK fan base with the starting quarterback. We said it last week with not an impressive effort against MTSU. That even though Piggy won the offensive player of the week, you still beat a bad Middle Tennessee by 3 points. And it took everything we had to beat them. But we said last week, he bought himself a little more time in SQB1. And fortunately, that was another half of football. The ball's just hitting the turf way too much. Every game the ball's hit the turf. He gets hit, he's running, he's scrambling, and the ball's coming out. And it's just putting us behind the 8 ball, both in field position, possession of the ball, points off turnover. There's no rhythm in the offense being established. And almost as soon as Kavaris Thomas came in, I've kind of been, I don't want to say clamoring for it, but I was right there watching him during the Liberty game. Like, he's ready to go in. You can see Kavaris pop up. He's ready to go in the game. And fortunately, that happened against Marshall, albeit in bad circumstances, getting blown out, getting goose-egged. But he came in, and you almost immediately saw a better rhythm with the offense. And this is a guy that, other than gimmick, quarterback draw, designed run plays in the last 2+ seasons, that's rust. He hasn't really played since high school, beyond, practice reps. So came in, you saw an established rhythm, connections with wide receivers. He could see over the offensive line. He could hit some wide receivers, and we put some points on the board. Now, does that mean if he starts a whole game that we're, neck and neck? I'm not saying not necessarily, because we've already alluded to Marshall kind of took the air out of the ball, throttled down a little bit, and got to the finish line. They did what they had to do to win the game and get out of there. But hopefully we saw a changing of the guard that hopefully will lead us to greener pastures, not only this season, but looking towards the future, because the graduate transfer is in our future. That's a plug them in and you win now. If you're not winning now, why are you here? What are we doing? So I like the move. I'm for it. I ran a poll. 45 people responded. All 45 of them said yes or definitely yes that we should put Kavaris Thomas in. that was the only two options. But but I think we made the right move, and I hope Helton sticks to those guns going to UAB and Birmingham. I like how the offense started to look, and I would love to see him get that full-time opportunity.
Well, look, there's no question that the offense started to move up and down the field. He came in and ripped a 51-yard pass to Xavier Lane and got him down close. Beautiful ball. The 26 or 20, I can't remember, 28-yard touchdown, 26-yard touchdown pass to Smith was a laser beam right down the seam. It's beautiful. You like to see it. So it doesn't matter that it might not have been against Marshall's ones, because Marshall's twos are just as good as just about any defense you're going to see the rest of the way in Conference USA. So why not give the kid a shot? Because if everybody's getting a year of eligibility back, then he's only a redshirt sophomore. So you play you're 4 games in, you got the rest of this season. He gets a season back and then 3 more. So he could be, or 2 more, he could be a 4-year starter still after being on campus for 3 years. I mean, if you're going to take your lumps, I said this to you at the game, and I know you agreed, but if you're going to take your lumps this year, why not take it with a guy that could be your starter for 4 years? Why take him with a guy who's going to be gone after this year, no matter what? So I'm for the move for Kavaris Thomas too. I mean, how do you just stand 6'4", 235 pounds on the sideline? I mean, he's amazing. He's an amazing athlete. I think he deserves a shot. He's been there for 3 years, comes in and moves the offense. I just think it's time. He's paid his dues, sat through 2 grad transfers, or 1 and a current one. So give him a shot. He's proven he can move the ball. Let's talk Marshall individuals. Trace, for the second week in a row, well, not week, second game in a row, Grant Wells has played a game manager game, and the Herd has won convincingly. No touchdowns, no interceptions again for Grant Wells. Not even one on the ground this week. So 16 out of 22 for 162 yards. Good for 7.4 yards per completion. He did have some big-time throws, made some big-time completions to move the chains. Brock Thompson had a really nice catch. Willie Johnson had one in the middle of the field and in traffic that was nice. But it's such a luxury to have the offensive line that he has. He knows he's going to have time. They're not relying on him to throw 5 touchdowns a game in order to be competitive or win. He's just in a best-case scenario right now. Great run game, great offensive line, stellar defense. What better recipe for a young quarterback? Then the current reigning MVP of Conference USA, Brendan Knox, also came in as advertised. 15 carries, 107 yards, 7.1 yard average. A hat trick on the ground, baby. 3 touchdowns. That's a career high for Brendan Knox. Sheldon Evans came in and did just as well. 14 carries, 64 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, and a touchdown on the ground. Brock Thompson, leading receiver, both receptions and yardage, 4 catches, 94 yards, good for 23.5 yards per reception. And Talik Keaton chips in 3 catches for 20 yards. You've already talked about that offense and what they were able to do. So, I mean, I don't know what we can say that you haven't said already. It was a great run game. The offensive line dominated. Wells did more than enough. He didn't hurt himself. So, let's just move along to the defense, because I'm sure you're going to want to talk about that a little more. Leading the charge for the Herd defense, Najee Johnson, the senior safety, West Virginia kid, 5 tackles, 4 solo, 1 pass defended. Eli Neal, 5 tackles, 4 solo. Brandon Drayton gets the Herd's only sack. A couple of guys had more tackles than he did, but he gets the Herd's only quarterback sack, so we're going to feature him in the recap. 3 tackles, all 3 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. And Tevontae Beckett, who we all thought was going to have 10-plus tackles, be in on every single play. Didn't have that kind of game. 2 tackles, both solo, but 3 fumble recoveries, and 1 went for 38-yard scoop and score. What a game for Tevontae Beckett. Is it possible to get Conference USA Defensive Player of the Week honors with 2 tackles? Is it possible? Just for good measure, let's go ahead and talk about special teams real quick, because there wasn't very much of it. Shane Chucci gets himself 1 of 1 on field goals, 5 of 5 on extra points, and Robert Lefevre, solid day punting, 5 punts for a 42-yard average. That's your stat line, Trace. Anything you want to add or drive home before we, talk about the Western stats?
Yeah, I want to drive home.
Well, I'm sorry. Before we get your grades is what I meant.
Yeah. Well, I want to drive home the fact that I'm in love with the offensive line. I'd like to drive that home a little bit more. Come on now. What is this, the best O-line Marshall's had in the 21st century? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
so.
It very well might be. I mean, I've been very vocal on my thoughts of the 2014 O-line, and I still am just so fond of the 2014 O-line. But like, if this keeps up like it's going right now, I think this year's will eclipse that. I mean, 5 seniors that are playing at the best level that they could possibly play, really. I mean, even like last night, I remember there was one third down wherever Grant Wells hit Willie Johnson for a first down, and I think Western like sent 4, I think, and they didn't even remotely penetrate that line at all. And I remember the announcer saying, "Look at all the time Wells has to throw the ball," and like that's such a valuable part of a team. Like that can literally make or break an entire offense. And I mean, even if you have a quote unquote average offense, if you have a great O-line, that you can make that offense look a lot better than average. Now, I'm not saying Marshall has an average offense because I think they have a very solid offense so far. But, I mean, this O-line elevates everything. I mean, like you said, it's a perfect case scenario for Grant Wells because he has the best running back in the league, the best O-line in the league. He's got some talented receivers, albeit some inconsistent, but very talented overall group of receivers this year. He's got a great defense that's been shutting down everybody. I mean, what more could you want out of a young quarterback making his first career start? So, I mean, come on. I mean, it's just awesome to see how great this O-line has been so far. And honestly, like, if those guys, well, I don't know how many will come back next year, but if they come back, look out. Look out.
Well, breaking news this afternoon, speaking of the offensive line. Yeah, I mean, it was announced. It's official. The player put it on social media, so it's out there. The Herd can lose 1 or 2 guys off of this offensive line because transferring in from North Carolina is former Huntington High School standout and number 1 prospect in the 2017 class out of West Virginia is former Huntington High School offensive lineman Billy Ross, and Billy was an absolute stud. I mean, he was on a lot of big-time radars when he was coming out of high school in Huntington. So to get Billy Ross back and have him in the offensive line room, man, the rich are getting richer at the offensive line position in this conference, for at least in the case of Marshall. That's a big-time get. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but it was broken today and announced today, so I feel like we can talk about it on the podcast. Let's talk about some grades real quick, and then we'll move along and let them off, I talk about Western. I know there's some fans that are frustrated is a kind way to put it. I mean, we talked to some of those people after the game, and they all had certain thoughts. I mean, we're not naming any names here, but the general consensus amongst the fans is kind of getting to be the same old song. It's the same old song and dance, and they're kind of sick and tired of it. So let's talk about grades, Trace. What do you got for Grant Wells this week? 162 yards, 16 out of 22, no touches, no interceptions, no fumbles, no turnovers.
Yeah, I gave him an A- this week. I mean, I thought he played really well, in control the entire way. Like, he never looked rattled at all. Only got sacked 1 time, which, again, O-line. But, I mean, just looking at his numbers a little bit more, I mean, like you said, 16 to 22, that's 72% completion. That's really good. And not to mention, he had a couple pretty big drops because there was one pass he threw in perfectly to Corey Gamage there in the first half. He just flat dropped it. Corner didn't even look for the ball. You remember what I'm talking about? Corner did not even look for the ball. It would have been about a 30-yard gain. Gamage just flat out dropped it. And then later on in the second half, I think, there was, or I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was another drop that should have been caught. I can't remember. It might have been a Willie Johnson play. I can't remember. But there was at least 2 pretty big that would have been big gainers. So he could have had a lot better numbers and maybe even a touchdown. But even without a touchdown, I mean, he had no interceptions or fumbles, which is huge for a young freshman quarterback. That was, and albeit in his first career road start too. On the road at a rival. I mean, that's a pretty big deal to not have any turnovers. So good stuff there. Just like I said, he was just smooth. He just played very smooth. Game manager-ish, if you want to look at it like that, but I have absolutely no problem with that. I mean, and the only reason I gave him A- is just because he didn't throw a touchdown, but like that's literally like that's the most nitpicking I can give him is he didn't throw a touchdown. So A-.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice problem to have when you have to get nitpicky to find something wrong. Yeah. Overall, offensively, I mean, about 150 yards off the average, but it is what it is. 38 points on the board, albeit one of those touchdowns defensively, but hey, you're undefeated against a rival. Big win. What do you got for the offense?
Yeah, I'll give the offense a regular A. I really like what they did. 343 total yards, and it probably would have been more if Doc wouldn't have let his foot off the gas a little bit, or just in general, they probably would have had more. 38 points, albeit one of those being defensive. Good balance, 162 passing, 181 rushing. You like to see the balance there. 7.4 yards a pass, 4.5 yards per rush. Nearly plus 10 in time of possession, nearly 10-minute advantage there, which I thought was big. And then, of course, the offense having no turnovers was huge because we've seen so many times on the road Marshall just self-destructs on offense, and they have not done that. They haven't done it this year, and they didn't do it yesterday. So, real tough there. Just think 2 years ago, whenever Marshall played out Western, they had all kinds of turnovers in that game. But of course, sneaked out a win, but they had a bunch of turnovers in that game. So it was really good to see them play clean. I think they would have put up more points and yards had they kept their foot on the gas more. But that's just, like I said, that's just nitpicking, really. So I'm going to give them an A.
All right. Defensively, does the streak continue?
Well, it's not an A++, but it's an A+. I swear I was going to give them an A++, but then the garbage points kind of dropped it a little bit. But if you look at it, 14 points allowed, but really the first stringers didn't give up anything. The first stringers that were actually in there playing their absolute hardest didn't give up any points. So you got to be super impressed there. 294 total yards. 85 rushing yards allowed. They just continue to stuff the run. I didn't really know how good the run defense was going to be this year just because they lost quite a few impactful players in the front seven, but good Lord, they have been stout this year. Look what they did the first three games. I don't think they've given up 100 yards rushing to anybody or even close to. App State had 90 or something, I think, or whatever, but that's impressive to see how good they've been in that aspect. They had the defensive touchdown on the fumble return by Beckett. That was big. They helped force 3 turnovers. And a really interesting stat that I found out on here that I looked up because I was thinking I was going to compare from Western's first touchdown drive of the game or before that and then from after that. And they had, out of their 294 total yards, 202 of those yards came in the final 17 minutes and 22 seconds of game time. That's pretty crazy. They only give up 92 yards in basically 3 quarters. So defense, and with the starters in there. So, just phenomenal defense, really. It would have been an A++ if it wouldn't have been for that, especially that last touchdown in the last few seconds. I was like, come on, you're going to really be loving, giving that last touchdown there. But no, that's more nitpicking stuff. So A+, no doubt about it.
Not much special teams to talk about. Chuchi perfect on his field goal, perfect on extra points. Lefevre actually edged out John Haggerty in punt average in this game, so it wasn't by much, but he clipped him by the better part of a yard. Special teams did their job. What's the grade?
I'm going with an A for special teams. I thought they were really good. Like you said, there wasn't a whole lot that stood out necessarily, but that's a good thing because sometimes the only things that stand out are negatives, and they didn't have any negatives on special teams. I think the only thing that you could say negative was I know there was a hold on a punt return in the first quarter. That was literally it. Like you said, 1-on-1 on field goals, made all of his extra points, 42 yards a punt from Lefevre actually was a little more than I thought it would be. After watching the game, I didn't know if the average would be that high or not. And then he also had a great punt inside the 5-yard line in the second quarter. It checked up like a sand wedge on a green. It was great. It was a really good punt. Talik Keaton had 13 yards of punt return, which was really good. There was a couple that he almost broke.
He is always just one shoelace away.
Yes.
Always.
Every time he takes it back, I'm always thinking, okay, this one's going to the house. He just needs one more block, and it was more of the same. Good punt return, great kick coverage. That's giving me peace of mind. Knowing that their kick coverage is better. This
is the hill you're willing to die on, right?
Pretty much the hill, yeah. So whatever. I'm giving them an A. Special teams really good.
Yeah, coaching, great effort. What do you got?
I got another A for the coaching. You got to give them an A, especially from the fact that they did not come out rusty. They did not come out flat. They came out as sharp as you possibly could come out. Given all the circumstances that we've already talked about, they punched them in the mouth. Like they really did. They had them ready to go. They had them raring to go. I mean, you could tell they was intense. They played they played with a high intensity level. They played really tough, physical. There were so many big hits. I mean, there was a lot of you could tell like they were just itching to play again, and it helped that it came against Western Kentucky in a big rivalry. So that was great there. It was just a total team effort. I mean, from the coaching staff, like every unit was solid or better than solid. You know, I like the game Cramsey called. You know, they came out of halftime strong, kept it up. The only thing that you could nitpick about the coaching is they let up when they got up 38-0, which, I mean, it's 38-0 basically at the start of the fourth quarter. So you're not exactly going to try to score 30 more in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, some fans, think about 2016 and they think, oh, we need to put up 60 on them or whatever. That's just not really that important in the grand scheme of things. Even though it would have been nice to see it, it's not that important. So more nitpicking there. But other than that, though, coaching was really good. So nothing but praise this week. Give them an A.
All right, clean. A lot of A's on the report card this week. We've got an overall grade left. I mean, proof's in the pudding here. What do you got?
It's an A. That's where the proof is. Yeah, it's an A. I mean, just a great game. It really was. It was not what I expected. I mean, I expected a tough, grinded out, pretty ugly game, honestly. It did not look like that at all, at least from the Marshall side of things. It was not any of that. It was smooth sailing for most of the game. Very impressive showing, especially given the fact that it had been so long since they had played a game, and I was worried that they would come out and just wet the bed. But thankfully they didn't. And they were able to show why they should be in the top 25 right now, number 26 right now. So, whatever, that's fine. Shout out to USC and Minnesota who haven't played a game yet ahead of Marshall. Whatever. It's not. This isn't preseason rankings anymore. It's mid-October. They should have to have played a game. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So, but as far as this game goes, awesome game. Hopefully they can keep it up. I mean, you always but the thing with Marshall is that you've watched them for long enough to realize that game's probably coming. And when I say that game, I mean that game where it just looks like a completely different team. They start the wheels fall off. I just in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, when is this game going to happen? Is it going to happen? I hope it doesn't, but like it, I've seen this song and dance a lot, so hopefully they can keep it together. Hopefully, I mean, I think they have the team to do it. So, I mean, great game. So it's got to be an A overall.
Great, yeah. Shout out to Brett McMurphy for still continuing to only rank teams that have played.
Yes.
Steven told me earlier that he had the Herd at number 14 in the country. So shout out to McMurphy for keeping it real, man. He's the true MVP in these polls. So last question, Trace. What do you know about the Herd after this game?
Well, we know that they're probably the conference, who would say favorites right now. I mean, I think most would agree with that sentiment. I mean, it's hard. It's still, I mean, there's a few teams in the conference that might be nipping at their heels. UAB's been pretty good so far. I don't know. La Tech's got a good record, even though I don't really know how good they are yet. So there's a lot of unanswered questions with the Conference USA right now. I mean, FAU's only played one game. Who knows how many games they'll play at this rate. But, I mean, I think Marshall's in the clubhouse in the East right now. I think they're the team to beat in the East thus far. So we'll see. I mean, but they were the team to beat in the East last year too, until week 10 or 11. So, I mean, you just don't know how it's going to go. But, I mean, got to be freaking thrilled as all get out with the start for this season. I mean, they haven't been 3-0 since 2014, and we all know how that year ended up. So hopefully they can keep going like that.
Well, the ultimate goals ended up pretty good for the Herd, but that one, unable to be perfect, and the fact that it was 1 point that kept you from being perfect, it just sticks in the crawl.
Who played in that game again? Who they play that one again?
Well, the guy that knows a lot about that team's coming on right now, because it's time to talk Western Kentucky. I know, I don't know if really we're left with more questions than answered after this game. I think we had some questions answered, Steve. And, I know like I said, we talked to some fans after the game, and, they're feeling a certain kind of way. And a lot of that mirrors what you've been thinking. So we'll see how it moves on, especially when they come out of the tunnel next week down in Birmingham. But look, let's talk about the Toppers here. It was not the game that they had hoped they would get. I want you to, you're really good at being honest and landing on the line and not holding back. And I'm not telling you to pile on or anything, but folks are going to get the real truth, as Moff sees it. So Piggy T, not a stellar game. He was the 200 proof player for both Moff and I going in. And we said if he lit it up, that Western had a good chance to win. If he didn't play so well, they had no shot, and he did not play well at all. 12 of 21 for 61 yards, only 2.9 yards per reception or completion. QBR of 15.1. Officially, it goes down as 2 fumbles and 2 fumbles lost, but I'm telling you, I think we saw a couple more that trickled out of bounds. So 7 carries for 28 yards. Enter Kavaris Thomas in a little bit over a quarter and a third, maybe a quarter and a half. 9 of 18 passing, 148 yards, 8.2 yards per completion, 1 touchdown through the air, 74.4 QBR, another 7 carries for 30 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown on the ground. So actually, Kavaris Thomas in a quarter and a half puts up better numbers than Piggy T does and leads the team in rushing and passing for that game. But, of course, the leading rusher from a running back position was Jakari Moses, 6 carries, 22 yards, also credited with 1 lost fumble. The wide receivers leading the way again this week. Xavier Lane, 4 catches, 74 yards, big 51-yard completion, which was a gorgeous ball. Dayton Wade, 8 catches, 58 yards, 7.3 yards per reception. Dayton Wade's really starting to come on and catch a lot of balls. It seems like he's turning into that slot chain mover type guy that Western has been looking for since Ja'Cour Pearson entered the transfer portal. And then Dalvin Smith, I believe you said he's a local kid. Just 1 catch, 26 yards, and that beautiful touchdown down the seam. Leading the charge defensively for the Toppers, Dev Key, the guy, 10 tackles, 9 of those solo. D'Angelo Malone had a good game, really. He just didn't get to the quarterback as much. 8 tackles, 7 of those solo, 1 tackle for loss. Kyle Bailey, 8 tackles, 5 solo, also 1 tackle for loss. And Ricky Barber, a guy that we featured from the defensive line position we thought would be important, racks up 6 tackles, 3 solo, and 1 quarterback hurry. Narveson didn't get a chance to kick a field goal. I know you were hoping to see that big leg in action, but he did go 2 of 2 on extra points. And John Haggerty, 6 punts, 248 total yards, good for 41.3 yards per punt. Steve, come on in here. I know as bad as you don't want to talk about it, but you do want to talk about it. Let's tell me what you saw and what you think needs to happen.
I mean, we just saw an offense in the first half that just wasn't clicking. Even on plays and drives, possessions, when Piggy T had, both of us agreeing he had all the time in the world to make a play, find a receiver, go through his progressions. He couldn't make the throws. That's just what it boils down to. He couldn't make the throws, and we tried to force things. His accuracy was bad, or he dropped the ball. And you hate to see it, but that's kind of been a common theme to the season. Very athletic guy. There's no question about his speed and what he can do to get between the tackles. And he does throw a pretty ball. When he makes some passes, the pass to Dalvin Smith against Liberty was an absolute pretty ball. Touchdown to Mitchell Tinsley against Louisville, pretty ball. He could throw a pretty ball. There's just not consistency there. And then look at the running game. We've kind of been asking and waiting, when is Gage Walker going to, get his traction? When's he going to get going? And, I had this discussion earlier with someone on Twitter. We're just not seeing the same burst, the same vision, the same, get through, hit the hole, get through, and a big game. We've yet to see one from Gage Walker. And people are asking, is it O-line? Is it him? What's going on? But then we see other running backs get put in, Jakari Moses, C.J. Jones, Malik Staples, these other guys get put in, and they have success. So, not huge success, but still they're not just running into the line and, getting 2-yard gain. So, there's just a lot of question marks. It seems like there needs to be some wholesale changes at a couple starter positions. Obviously the first one's quarterback. We've been asking that question for a couple games now, and I think the proof is in the pudding. What we saw in a quarter plus from Kavaris, I think that has to be your starter going forward. The running back position. When you see other guys being successful when they come in, Jakari and even C.J. Jones, who I feel like we haven't really seen much of in the last game plus, but when he comes in, he's a good little scat back that makes some plays. It's frustrating to come in and expect 8-9 wins, and now you're staring down the barrel of 1-3, and starting a pretty tough gauntlet. That doesn't get any easier going to Birmingham with our home winning streak next week. So it's frustrating, but the optimistic side of things says maybe there's a quarterback change and maybe there's brighter days ahead. I really feel that way, and I think Kavaris is ready to step up and be the gamer that we know he is as a 4-star recruit coming in. I think he's ready to shine, and be the guy, hopefully.
I mean, a quarterback change is what led to the run for the Tops last year. And I'm not saying one way or the other, or that's what needs to happen, but I do feel like right now at this point, Thomas gives you the best opportunity to go get a win. The offense just looked much smoother and much more efficient and was obviously more productive when he was in there. So you got to roll with the guy, man. I mean, if it's a little bit of trial by fire, then that's what it has to be. But if you're going to lose anyway, lose with a guy that can help you long term. And we don't want to see losses, but if you're going to have them, then have them with a guy that can be there the next year and the next year and the next year. So, I mean, the offense was what it was. It did not satisfy at all. I won't say at all, but enough. We talked about if the Tops got behind early, would they be able to battle back? And Marshall threw that punch in the face, first minute of the game, and Toppers looked a little shell shocked. And, by the time they kind of recovered, it was kind of 28-0 at halftime. So they put themselves in a hole early and just could never really dig themselves out. But defensively, a lot of guys, the usual suspects, the guys that we featured, Steve, they had good individual games. So Dev Key, D'Angelo Malone, Kyle Bailey, Ricky Barber, I mean, they all had solid, productive games. You're talking about 26, 32 combined tackles for those four guys. So, I mean, defensively, there's got to be something that you like there, because it's not like Marshall racked up 700 yards. We knew they were going to live and die with the O-line and the run game in this particular game, and that's what we saw. So it's not like we were surprised. Grant Wells didn't come out and pass for 500 yards. But, what did you see defensively that you think is something good that we can take and move forward with?
Well, I mean, obviously, we'd like to see more pressure on the quarterback, what we're kind of known for. But the Marshall offensive line did a great job of containing the pocket, keeping those edges clean, keeping Grant Wells clean for the most part, till late in the game, I believe, when the sack occurred. Mm-hmm. But defensively, I mean, there were some big plays, but they were kind of, slip tackles, Brendan Knox running through arm tackles, making big plays. For the most part, the defense was in better position versus the big gashes we saw versus Louisville and versus Liberty when they were just out of position, bad angles. It really just felt like a lack of just basic form tackling in a lot of instances against Marshall to get off the field on some very big plays and gains. The third down issues, just getting off the field. So you can't be mad when you hold an offense well below their season average. 300 and some change yards. So hopefully going forward, that's something that we can continue, because that can help you win some games. The biggest issue is you can't turn the ball over. You can't give a good offense the ball right back on a shortened field. And you've got to put up more than 14 points in this league. I mean, you're just not going to win many ball games, if any, scoring 14 points in Conference USA. So defensively, even though we did give up some points, the effort was there, more disciplined. You'd like to see more stops and get off the field, but that's not the biggest issue in my mind right now. Even though the first couple games we were really kind of befuddled by their effort and execution. I was optimistic about what they're doing and how they're adjusting and getting better, even though they did give up points and lose the game. I still think that's a solid side of the ball. It's not hard to say it's our best side of the ball at this point.
Well, let's be honest. If the Topper offense puts together any semblance of points and drives in the first half, Marshall's not allowed or afforded probably the luxury to just live and die in the run game. So they just they put their defense in a position to have to continually stop the Marshall run attack and Sheldon Evans and Brendan Knox. I mean, that's just not fair, but looking forward, I don't think that the Topper defense will have to face a better offensive line, and I don't think they will face a deeper stable of running backs. So the sledding should get a little bit easier. But this one sucks. I know it sucks. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. It sucks. You want to win that game. You definitely don't want to lose by a huge margin, but you can't candy coat it because the scoreboard don't lie. It's 38-14, and it just is what it is. I mean, special teams wise, there wasn't much there. Haggerty did have a solid day. Like I said, he did what he could do. 6 punts is just too many punts in this game and in this rivalry game. I mean, it just says you're not moving the ball. The fact that Marshall went out and scored in 40 seconds and the Toppers turned around, went 3 and out, that ain't it, Chief. So let's skip to some grades. I mean, I know you wanted to see Narveson kick even in a windy situation, but it just didn't happen. They were behind by too much to be settling for field goals. So let's go to grades. I'm going to let you, we'll split quarterback into 2 because you played 2 and there's quite a big difference. So let's go first 2/3 of the game and second 2/3 of the game. So what do you got for the quarterback grades?
Yeah, I mean, the first 2/3 of the game is definitely an F. I mean, it's just 0 points. No flow to the offense. Giving the ball back to the other offense just too many times. So an F for the first 2/3. Kavaris, when he plugged in, though not as efficient as you'd like to see, there were some drives sustained, a couple big plays, points put on the board. So I would give Kavaris a B for his, quarter plus of effort and, really optimistic about what you might see when that becomes a full-time role and, knocks that rust off. So F for Piggy, B for Kavaris.
And it cannot be overstated that Thomas comes off of the bench basically cold in his first significant game action at the quarterback position ever. And you're right. It's always been special plays or, a trick play or something like that. So this was his first time to legitimately line up under center and run a couple of series and not have the fear of just getting yanked immediately. So there's something to be said about that too, but B's a solid grade for sure. Offensively as a whole, look, I don't have to tee you up to give a grade because, I know you're not happy. So what do you got for the offense?
Yeah, I mean, just offensively as a whole, I mean, you can only do so much when your quarterback's putting the ball on the ground so much. So I'll give him a D, just because there were some areas, running backs and some wide receivers stepping up, making plays, Dayton Wade, Xavier Lane that we've mentioned. And Kavaris, when he came in, he did look solid. So I'll give him a D. I won't put him on the floor, give him an F. But hopefully you have to see that step forward. There has to be points put on the board. Tyson said it. We said it last year. We'll say it this year. You've got to hit that 30-point benchmark. You've got to get there in this conference. And we're not there. We're not close to there. But we've got to get there if we want to win some games down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm going to mention one thing we haven't talked about. It did happen several times that there were balls on the mark from both quarterbacks, and the receivers just didn't simply make the catch. So there were more drops than we should have seen from this group of wide receivers. You can't just always throw the excuse that it wasn't an ideally thrown ball because, geez, if everybody got an ideally thrown ball, then football would be easy. So you're going to have to make the tough catch from time to time. But point blank, we probably saw collectively a half a dozen drops, and you just can't have that. So how about the defense? I mean, it is what it is, have at it.
Yeah, I mean, put in bad position several times, short fields, quick turnovers, just being on the field a lot. We mentioned the 10-minute disparity in time of possession. So, those guys are gassed, they're tired. They're trying to do anything they can to protect the ball game. They gave up points. That's what it boils down to. Are you getting stops? Or are you giving up points? And they gave up points. So I'm going to give them a D, just because you give up 38 points. They weren't terrible. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't an average game by any means. So a D for the defense. You'd like to see them get off the field more often.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, truly, I don't know how many of that 38 you can pin on the defense, because like you said, they were given a short field to have to work from. And a lot of times they were just put right back out on the field because of a turnover. So, and of course, Marshall did have a defensive touchdown, but still, the points are on the board, and they've got somebody has to take the blame for them. Special teams, what do you got?
It's not applicable. And I do not NA.
Yeah.
They
did their job.
My boy Narvison did not get to get out there, man. He was just, hanging out. No field goals for him. We need quite a few. Haggerty, did what he does, 40-yard plus average. Nothing special. You're really on the special team side. So I think a C is lenient, average. It was, it was what it is. It's what you expect. So a C for the special teams and limited action.
Yeah. Hey, there wasn't a negative. There was no drop punch. So take what you can get, give the C and move along. Coaching this week. I don't feel like I want to lead up to it and talk about it. I just want you to lay it on me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to rip coaching so much. I mean, the coaches can't go out there and hold on to the football, Velcro it or stick them to their gloves and not make fumbles. And they did make a quarterback change when it was maybe too late, but it was needed. So, coaching's it's a D. It could be an F if you want to look at a bad loss in a bad fashion. Took some late garbage time points to even make it look respectable. But I don't think the coaching was terrible. I think the execution side of it was terrible, which if you choose to parlay that to the coaching or not, they're not making the plays. They're just calling them, and, we've got to execute. But, I don't think the coaching was terrible per se, but obviously we need to be better in pretty much every facet of the game to be competitive, win some games. So I'll give them a D. I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, it's not on them, but the results didn't pan out the way they want. So overall this week, lots of low grades, a couple of bright spots in there, but what do you got for the tops following the 2020 Moonshine Throwdown?
I don't remember any bright spots, though.
You don't? You don't remember the backup quarterback coming in and playing well?
But he didn't get I guess he got half a grade. He got,
yeah.
We're grading him on a curve, I guess. But overall, a D. I think that was almost kind of across the board. It's kind of a D. And losing in that fashion, really you have to give your props to Marshall. We talked about during the game. You mentioned it earlier, when I gave them props for their defense swarming. Their guys were making hits and not just making tackles. They were driving guys to the turf. Love to see it. I mean, that's execution. That's coaching. That's a lot of things they're doing right. And, Western just isn't as disciplined as them right now. We're a lot of arm tackles, a lot of big plays given up. The first two plays of the game are a 30-yard drive, a 30-yard pass, and a 45-yard run. That, cleaner tackling, cleaner execution, we could have got off the field. But, I give a lot of props, a lot of respect to the Marshall side. And, Trace has to be super excited about having a quarterback that has several years left early into his career. I told you, KD, that guy's going to win a lot of ball games. He's, like you said, he's in a perfect scenario, perfect situation right now. He doesn't have to fling the ball 40 times a game, throw 5 touchdowns, put it in, the 4-string running back's belly and let him make some plays. And they've got a good ball team. So a lot of respect. Expect them to do big things in CSA this year, and hope Western cleans it up, and maybe hopefully a quarterback change spins their season into a different direction.
Well, look, if Kavaris Thomas proves to be the guy, and it looks like obviously Grant Wells is the guy, we could be seeing these two guys face off for one another for the next 4 years. And wouldn't that be awesome? Some continuity. I think the most matchups we got was maybe, I don't know. I mean, because it was Dowdy played in 2, and he got Cato and Litton, and then Mike White played in 2, right? So it might have been Mike White and Litton twice. So that's the head-to-head is 2. So if we could get before that or longer than that, that'd be awesome. Something that you can really rally behind. But look, here's the big question. We're going to talk about what looms here in a moment. But what do you know about WKU after this game? That's what a lot of folks want to know. What does Moff know?
Well, I know that we needed to make a change at quarterback, and we did that. We need consistency. We need stability at that position. If you're not scoring points in this league, you're not winning. And when you're given the ball right back, fumbling, putting down ground, turnovers, throwing passes in the dirt, whatever it may be, you're just not getting it done. So obviously, we need some consistency at quarterback. We need to improve the running game. That really has not got clicking on all cylinders. And we just, we need to figure it out. We haven't found an identity yet. Whereas last year at this time, we were kind of, figuring out who we were. And, Ty's Story was getting to adjust and getting to know his playmakers. And we started to see gradual improvement week to week. Whereas right now it's still kind of shaking 8 ball and what are you going to get each week? We have no idea. And that's concerning, given, what we thought we had coming back and what we thought we were going to do this year and the success that, we assumed was coming with it. So there's still a lot of questions out there, but, we know we need to stabilize a couple positions to put us in better position to win some ball games down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, you got the next opportunity is a good way to turn the corner and start going the right way, because this coming week, the Toppers are traveling down to UAB and they have a big opportunity to make a headline. If they go to Birmingham and beat UAB at home and snap that 20-game home win streak that UAB is just boasting all over, that's going to make waves in the conference. It just is. And let's face it, last year, nobody really was giving Western Kentucky that much of a chance, to beat UAB. It was kind of like, man, they're going to have to play their best game. UAB is going to have to not play their best game type thing. And, it may be a little bit of that this year. But look, if the Tops go to Birmingham and get a win, it's going to put waves through the conference. It just is. And a lot of those folks are going to pipe down just a little bit because the Toppers get a win. And if Kavaris Thomas is leading the charge and getting that win, I think your answer at quarterback is solidified. And for the Herd, they're going to go down to Ruston. And you talked about the game that could bring them back down to earth a little bit. Louisiana Tech's always tough. And the Marshall put together their best game of the season, I think, in my opinion, against Louisiana Tech last year during 75 week. But it cannot be overstated that Louisiana Tech was without several starters, including their starting quarterback, but still 75 week is a different animal for the Herd, and they just seem to play at another level. But look, the return game in Ruston could be a tough one. Another away game, farther from home. This might be where the defense doesn't play lights out and Grant Wells actually has to kind of do something other than manage the game to get the Herd to win. But let's talk about final thoughts, fellas, and we'll get out of here. Trace, you can come back in, give us final thoughts, and then we'll bring in Steve and look forward to next week.
Yeah, just looking at Marshall a little closer here, if you're a fan, you have to be genuinely, pumped right now. I feel like a lot of, the last few years, they've kind of just been stuck in neutral. They're stuck in neutral has been, 8-ish wins, 9-ish wins, which is pretty good. It's just now it looks like this team, there's something, that's what I said earlier to somebody. I said, it seems like something about this team is just different this year. Maybe, I don't know what it is, but all the major question marks that we've had as fans, they've answered them. First game of the year against Eastern Kentucky. How would Grant Wells look in his first game? Is he going to go out there and stink it up? He was as good as he could possibly be. Second game against a ranked App State team. Can Marshall finally get a big signature non-conference win? They got it in impressive fashion. And then this game, a 3-week layoff on the road at a rival. Are they going to play like crap? Are they going to, struggle? They didn't. So, so far, all those questions that Marshall usually fails to answer the way we want, they've answered them the way we wanted so far. I mean, as fans, and that's very reassuring. I mean, that's got to be very good for the rest of the season. Hopefully, I mean, we can't just assume. That's what I keep trying to keep in the back of my mind, and fans need to remember this: that the season's far from over. I mean, anything can happen. They can start coming back down to earth, and like you said, go into rust. And Marshall has never played there in the Conference USA era against Louisiana Tech. They've never played there, so it's going to be a whole new environment. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I've only watched a little bit of Louisiana Tech this year, and I don't know how good they actually are. But they're always usually, 7 to 9 win team or more every year, and that's kind of hard to come by in Conference USA. So. I mean, they're always one of the most consistent teams in the conference. It's going to be a tough game down there. That's a long trip. That's a way longer trip than what they just made. So we'll see. But, I mean, as far as the first 3 games go, you have to honestly, they really couldn't have gone any better. So great start.
Yeah. Steve, what do you got final thoughts this week?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the fan base is still here with us. I mean, I know Western obviously starting 1-3 isn't what we expected. We've seen, the Louisville team. We expect them to be good. We know they're athletic. We know what they bring to the table. That's a tough game. The Liberty game, it stung. It felt like a bad loss. Our home opener. But as we watch them play, we can kind of see that they might be a legit team. That's not a terrible loss. At this point, they seem like they're a really good ball team. That quarterback is dynamic. Hugh Freeze is a good coach. The concerns right now, we wish we had beaten Middle by a bigger margin, to kind of squeak by them in that rivalry game is, you'd like to be more convincing there. Then you'd like to parlay that into a more consistent game with Marshall. But we just, turn around and we said a key to the game would be playing a clean game, keeping penalties low, turnovers low. But when you have 3 turnovers and, one of them immediately turns into points and the others, I'm sure turned into points off turnover for Marshall. So, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball immediately. But you've got a chance now to kind of reset, maybe focus on a new QB1, get him more reps in practice, get more comfortable with his weapons that he has. He's been in the system. He knows the coaching staff. He knows the players. So, you have that, familiarity there. It's not a brand new guy, a freshman coming in. So you feel pretty good about that. Hopefully plugging him in at UAB and just kind of seeing where that goes for the season. I'm optimistic what I saw at the end of the game. I don't think we can go backwards in any way, shape, or form versus what we've seen so far. So, even though the season may not to this point be what we expected or what we wanted, I'm still looking forward to seeing the rest of the season and how it plays out and what kind of coaching and personnel adjustments we make to try to hit, the ceiling of what we can accomplish this season.
Yeah. Look, there have to be brighter days ahead. There's just simply too much talent on the roster to continue this trajectory. And I said it last week, I'm going to say it this week. There's no time like this game to change the things. And making waves in such a way to where you grab the headlines for ending UAB streak is a great way to do that. And if you do it behind the arm and legs of a new quarterback, that's just going to quiet down so many people. You might get some more of those I told you so folks, but hey, a win is a win, and you can't win 2 until you win 1. And I know Western's already got one on the board, but you can't have a winning streak until you win one, and you can't win back-to-back until you win one. So it's got to start somewhere. Look, you mentioned, what do you think is different about the Herd this year that you just can't put your finger on, Trace? I'll tell you what I think I see as far as the defense goes. Play in and play out, it simply looks like these guys are on a mission to do damage and wreak havoc. Yeah. It doesn't look like they take a series off here and there, or they take a quarter off like we've kind of seen. They let up a little bit. I don't think there's any of that. I think if these guys are like, it's almost like they're challenging each other. Like, look, when I'm not in the game and you're in my spot, you better play it at the level that I play it. So you like to see that if you're a Herd fan. I mean, they've been good, but it just seems like they're playing with a little extra edge, a little extra anger and aggressiveness this year. So that's the difference. And it doesn't hurt that you've got big bodies on the line that can push people out of the way, and the best back in the conference outside of, I guess, the top three at FAU. I guess, I don't know.
Fourth best.
They keep saying that. No, I mean, I guess the three at FAU are better than Brandon. I guess that's what they keep saying.
They are,
but whatever. They can keep thinking that, and we know that the current best back in Conference USA resides in Huntington, West Virginia, and it's just a good problem to have. Marshall fans should be happy. If you're the fan that's nitpicking little stuff and aren't happy with what you're seeing, I don't know what more you want. I mean, they're not going to win games 60-0 every week. It's not going to happen.
No.
Doc doesn't coach that way. He's not going to put his players in a position to where they have to be on the field any longer than they have to secure a win. It's just not going to happen. They got long-term goals. They want championships, bowl win this year. So if you're expecting to see 50-0, it's just not going to happen. Be happy with your 38-14s or your 30s to 30-10 or whatever it is, and just be like, sweet, dub's a dub. If you keep winning, you're going to crack the top 25. They can't disregard you forever. You're at 26 right now in the AP. Probably one of two, maybe three teams left undefeated that's not ranked, and we all know it's a crime, but the only thing you can do about it is keep winning. So
yep.
Last thing we're going to talk about is I got to shout out all the folks who made pledges to make donations to the scholarship campaigns by either the point total that their team scored or the margin of victory or whatever. Everybody has come through with that, so I have to say thank you. These are not just words, folks. So people are actually coming through with their promises. Some folks are even donating the point totals of the score or of each team to each campaign. Yeah, you have Western fans that are donating to Marshall. You have Marshall fans that are donating to Western Kentucky. I don't know at this point why you're not clicking that link and at least tossing $10 their way. I mean, this is a good cause. This money is going directly to the scholarship foundations at each school. I mean, we're directly supporting the athletes that we love to watch. So Trace mentioned earlier that there's an article on Herd Zone. Go find that because it's a nice, well-written piece. I was extremely humbled that they reached out. I was extremely humbled, and I'm very gracious of the fact that they felt like this was a worthy enough cause to put it on print on Marshall's official athletics website. I mean, it's nice that they recognize what we're trying to do and that it's a good thing. Other than that, man, you guys got to get behind. We're not going to quit. I mean, it's not like I'm just going to stop talking about it. So if you're waiting on basketball season or next football season or what, I don't care. If it takes me 5 years to get this done, then it's going to take me 5 years to get it done because it's just that damn important. So until next week, well, I guess until later this week, we'll be previewing the Tops at UAB and the Herd at Louisiana Tech. But for now, Steve, take us out of here and we'll see him on the next episode.
Go Tops.
Trace.
Go Herds.
Go Herds. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. We'll see you next time. Later.